sure many of you are thinking, I'm still struggling to make sense of it all myself. It happened so quickly, but I suppose it could have been considered a blessing in disguise, since at least he didn't have to suffer with incurable cancer for too long. I want to tell you a little about my childhood, growing up with my father, the artist. As a child, my parents set me up for a lifelong love of art and art history. While other kids my age were going to Disney World and Six Flags, my parents took my brothers and I around the country visiting every art museum we came across. I don't think I really appreciated the hours upon hours immersed in museums until much later when I was already out of the house. However, some of my best conversations with my father over the recent years have involved discussing the master's compositions and various art complexities that I have encountered while going to school and visiting museums. I guess you could say he was my go-to person for all things art. Growing up in our house, the living room had a 10-foot by 5-foot painting of 4 nude women standing in a room, the painting done by my father. Just guess the reaction from my friends. Of course, this was not the only painting. Each wall in every room was covered with paintings and sculptures by my parents as well as other local well-known artists, most of which were their good friends. You can imagine that my life growing up was not exactly the typical childhood, but I was happy for what I later felt had spurred my originality and creativity at a young age. Over the past few weeks, in recent times, I was finally able to read about the details of his illness that the doctors didn't describe to us. Those first several weeks were so hectic, I wasn't able to take the time out to look up anything. If I had known how horrible the prognosis really was, I think I would have made some changes much quicker than I actually did. We were told by the doctors that 12 months was the average lifespan for this type of illness. Much later, another doctor told me that only 10% with glioblastoma live that long. I just know my father was fighting so hard in the beginning. He thought it was treatable, or that if he could just overcome this difficult time, he could be in an easier place. After all, he told me he knew he was strong, and he could endure much worse if only he could be given the chance to overcome this pain he was having in his head. At last, when the doctors said the radiation treatment just wasn't working, he and I finally had a talk about what he would like to do. He wanted to get away, and I helped him do so. We had such a nice drive up to North Carolina, to my home. He's always enjoyed road trips, and it was nice that he was able to stay awake for those 11 hours to enjoy the ride. We spent the next several days enjoying my serene and back porch. He enjoyed watching the birds, occasional rabbits, and my children playing around him on the floor. On the last night before he took a turn for the worst, he stayed on the porch until well past midnight. He didn't want to come in. I covered him with a warm fuzzy blanket, which he gladly accepted, and we just talked. We talked about what he might like to do the coming days. We planned a short outing to a local farm where I usually go to pick up my produce. I knew that he'd enjoy those backcountry roads. We talked about whether or not he was happy. He told me he wasn't happy or sad. He told me he was cheerful. He told me there is no place in the world he'd rather be than sitting right there on my back porch. Of course, by this time, he had already started his final journey. Over those first few days at my house, he also told me things about how he felt he was being slowed down by certain people. He knew it would be sad for those he loved, but it would be good for him to go and that he needed to do so. I told him that I would try my best not to slow him down, and that if he felt he needed to go, then I would not stand in his way. He was cheerful, but sad because his work wasn't nearly finished. And I knew it. He doodled in his large sketchbook all day long, which is over there, by the way, much more comfortable with the chalk pencil than the marker I had given him previously in Mobile. He sat there contemplating his work as only a true artist actually knows how. He was trying to solve a puzzle that only he could see. I made him his favorite meals, and on one of his last days, he enjoyed quite possibly his all-time favorite, corned beef hash with eggs over easy. A breakfast meal he had made for me on several occasions before. On the very last day, we all seemed to sense that something was definitely different. Although he had been sleeping for several days, his breathing had changed. At some point in the morning, Leah, my mother's caregiver, and I rushed over because he made a strange noise. with my mother laying on his side, holding one hand and I the other, Aaliyah playing the music in which my mother had requested, and the nurse listening to his heartbeat for the very last time, we watched him take his final breath. At 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd of May, he stopped fighting and allowed himself to go. There are a lot of things about my father that I feel could never be answered by one person alone. He was a complicated man, and no one knows all the pain and hardship he's endured. I also don't believe that one person could ever know what truly made him happy. Art was definitely his passion, but it seemed to me that there was more to it than that. I had so much more to learn from him for my own development as an artist, but I wasn't nearly finished. I hope that all of you can help me to know my father better, and that we all can help keep his memory alive for generations to come. Thank you for sharing his memory with us, and please stay with us a while to help celebrate the good times of my father's life. And to close this, my brother has one more thing he'd like to add.
I don't do a lot of talking, so I didn't prepare any kind of speech. But when I found out what was going on, and it was only about 2 months ago, I made some music in my bedroom. I'm about to play that for y'all. Also, my dad was sleeping for about 2 weeks, and he had to endure what you're gonna have to endure now. But it won't be that long, so